Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Sri Gaura Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I guess you were really welcome, but I'd like to welcome everyone. Thank you. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is on the left altar, there are two deities, Nityananda and Chaitanya. And they are in a very interesting position. Their arms are raised in the air, and they're actually dancing. God's dancing. It's expression of joy, expression of, what we say, worship. The Lord is actually in a dancing pose to teach us a little bit about what is the means for practicing worship of God in this age.
there are so many religious practices. And you might even say people are enthusiastic to try to find something new. But this practice of Bhakti Yoga, or according to what we call teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, Vaishnava culture, tradition, philosophy, based on the teachings of Vedic knowledge, is the oldest spiritual and philosophical teachings within creation. It dates back at least as far as we can trace it. We can't even trace it as far as it goes, but we can trace it to the speaking of the Bhagavad Gita, which is at least 5,110 years ago. And that's the actual beginning of the Kali Yuga. It's even before that. Krishna spoke before that. Kali Yuga, or this age that we live in, there's different ages. It's like there's different seasons. There's summer, fall, winter, spring, like that. So there's different ages also. As there's 4 seasons, there's 4 ages also. The Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. We're in the Iron Age now. It's the most, what we say, difficult age to practice spiritual life. It's a good age for materialism. It's a good age for not fulfilling, but a good age for trying to fulfill your material desires. It's a very difficult age for spirituality. But it's a short age. It's only 432,000 years. So you don't have to worry, it's not that long. We've already finished 5,110 years. Actually today, 5,110 years. And when Krishna left the planet, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, disappeared from the planet, that was the advent of this age. Before then, he lived for 125 years, and he spoke teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, which, as far as we can understand in our tradition, we can trace back our philosophy that far. Of course, there are statements and philosophical teachings that go way before them, before the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, some of the older Vedic scriptures. But at least as far as practice and philosophy concerns, this is what we have. Now, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's Krishna himself. The Lord likes to incarnate, or he comes at different times to teach religious principles according to the age. And because this age is so difficult, people are not inclined to spirituality. And even if they are some inclined to spirituality, they wind up taking the wrong process anyway. It's unfortunate, because there are so many processes that promise you material benedictions if you practice spiritual life. You know, you can have good, healthy body, and you can also be very popular. You can develop some powers also. You can be able to, control other people, have mystic powers. You can do so many wonderful things. You can even, maybe disappear from one place and reappear in another place. There are yogis who do that. So in the name of spirituality, there are different gradations of the process. But fulfillment in spirituality comes with the process that is, what we say, identical in our nature. When we study the psychophysical nature of the living being, and it's more or less what satisfies a living being, is we find that, to have power, to have wealth, to have position, to have facilities, to have followers, or to even have some reputation, anything. Or even to have some understanding of, the difference between spirituality and materiality, is not the complete process. The complete process is when the heart becomes fully absorbed in the absolute nature of one's absolute truth, the absolute truth, or God. Because the nature of the living being is to love and serve God. Nityasiddha Krishna Prema Saruka Bunai Shravanadi Siddhi Chitti Kodi Yudoi. And this is a verse spoken by Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, who was the author of the life of Lord Chaitanya, where he says, the nature of the living being is to love God. And until one fulfills that loving propensity, everything else leaves one somewhat unsatisfied or incomplete in the practice. So Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach that process of how to love God in a very simple and easy way. It's so simple that it defies what we say simplicity. Chant the holy names of God, that's all. Sounds a little overly simplification, but basically that's the essence of the process. Lord Chaitanya, while he was God himself, incarnate, he only wrote 8 verses. And it goes Shik, Shastika. Shik means teachings, and Astika means 8. So 8 teachings about spiritual life. And then the first teaching, and we call it a verse actually, he describes what are the benedictions that one can receive from chanting the holy name. Just like when you're looking for something, you're thinking, what benefit will I get from it? And what are the benedictions? So there is an advertisement program to teach us a little bit about what is the value of chanting the holy names. Well, you chant the holy names, you feel happy, it's a nice musical rendition. What else? But when you actually go deeper into the philosophical teachings that surround the process of bhakti, you find that the chanting of the holy names is the most complete, perfect, and recommended process according to the age, according to the nature of the individual. Both. It complements the individual's nature, and it somehow supports the nature of this age. In the sense that supporting the nature of this age means that it's very difficult to practice spirituality. Really difficult, because the way the world is arranged. There's so many opportunities for material activities, so many, encouragements in that direction. So to practice spirituality in this age is difficult, really difficult. People are so busy with day-to-day life, which has become so complicated due to our lifestyle, that we kind of like squeeze in a little bit of God here and there. Fit it in somehow, put him on a schedule. But it should be the other way around, that God should be or the spirituality is the nature of the living being. The living being is a spiritual being. We're not a material being, that's the whole problem. We have a body, but we're not the body. We are the soul, or the spiritual element that gives life to the body. So life is spirit. Material means, what we say, separated from the source. Krishna, in the Bhagavad Gita, he explains very nicely the difference between spirituality and material. Spiritual is never begins and never ends. And material begins and ends. So what doesn't begin and what doesn't end, and what begins and what ends. So everything in this world you can, what we say, observe through the senses as a beginning and an end. But the living being is separate from that. And that living being is what gives life to matter. Matter's dead. His body's dead. It's just a combination of material elements. But when the soul is there, that's called life. Just like we have a relationship with friends or family members or people in general. And there's some affection, there's some friendship, there's some attachment to that individual, and vice versa. But when that person is no longer alive, the attachment starts to go. There may be some residual attachment due to loss, but that attachment starts to go and the relationship is finished, practically. So what is that makes that relationship begin and end? Is the presence of life. So when the soul leaves the body is dead. So when the soul is within the body, that is called life. So what is our relationship with this body? It's really not much. It's a relationship with the individual that's in the body, that makes the body. Although we haven't seen that person, still we have a relationship because we have that relationship based on the body arrangement. And we think that's the arrangement. But when that body is no longer functioning, it no longer is the relationship is there. So basically, we're actually loving the person or having a relationship with the person who you haven't even seen, which is the soul within the body, not the body itself. But because we're in the material world and we have material tendencies and we have material needs also, so we make relationships on the body and we think that's the relationship, but it's actually the presence of the soul within the body. That is, you can't love a body that doesn't function anymore. So you can't interact with it anymore. You interact with a living being, and life is spiritual. Krishna explains that in Gita. Amagvamsa, jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatana, mastastani indriyani prakritistani karshati. The living entity is Krishna's part and parcel eternally. And we're situated in the body with the mind and senses, and we're struggling. But there's no need to struggle. Life doesn't have to be a struggle. Life is really quite easy. If we live life according to what is life. If we live on the bodily platform, then we struggle. If we live on the spiritual platform, there is no struggle. So how to get to the spiritual platform is the process that Lord Chaitanya taught. And it's really simple, Chaitanya Krishna. It's that simple. But we say, well, I am chanting Hare Krishna, but I'm still struggling. Well, keep chanting. That's the process. Chaito, Darpana, Marjanam, Bhagamaha, Devadi Nirvakanam, Shreya Kaiva Vichandrika Vitanam, Vihavar Vijivanam, Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam, Patipadam Punam Vita Swardanam, Sarvatma Snapadam Panam Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. So this is the advertising campaign for the holy name. What is the benefits of the holy name? Chaito, Darpana, Marjanam. The soul is covered with what is called misconceptions or wrong conceptions, misidentifications, illusions, and various other, what we say, ideas in the wrong direction. So those things are covering over the soul. So the holy name is like, it's like a dust cloth that cleans the mirror, that is covering cleans the dust away from the mirror that's covering our heart. So as we chant, the dust is going. It's a cleaning process. Well, the soul is by nature pure. The purity is not something, and we have to access the purity. The purity is already there. Each living being is pure. Each living being is a pure soul. When we see each other, we identify with the body, and then we take that bodily identification to so many limits of identification. Old, young, this nationality, that nationality, this gender, this situation, that situation. In order to function, we might say on the material platform, these are required, but it's not reality. It's just the way it's more like a drama. If you live like live life like a drama rather than like the real thing, then you can live. A drama means you're more like play acting or you have the role. So play act your role good, be a good man, be a good woman, be a good husband or wife or child or whatever. But don't identify with the role. Get off the stage. The identification causes us to to start to think that we are actually what we're playing. These are simply roles, that's all. In one life, we're in this role. In another life, we're in a completely different role. So, we like this role, we identify this role because it's the current role. But it's one of many roles that we play throughout the history of our existence. But because it's the one that's happening now, it seems like the one that's real. But it's another form of what we say play acting. So these roles are like dust that are covering the heart. So the holy name is what we say. It's a means for removing the dust. Because the holy name, what it does, it destroys misconceptions or brings right conceptions. Because the holy name, what is the holy name anyway? That's even great sages and saints cannot understand the nature of Krishna's name. Because Krishna's name is non-different than Krishna. We heard that so many times, right? Krishna is non-different than me. What does it mean? What does it mean? It means that there is no difference between Krishna and his name. So there's just like, how we can describe it? If you're sitting down in front of a big feast and someone is describing to you what's the ingredients of the food that is sitting in front of you to help you maybe stimulate your desire to eat. So the description is helping you understand things and giving you some, what we say, enthusiasm to go ahead and partake. But until the experience actually happens, the realization of what is being said, it never comes about. So we can say, yes, Krishna is not different than his name, but through the experience of chanting, the realization comes gradually. Gradually. And then the experience, an experience is the best form of teaching. Because once you experience something and it's aligned with truth, then there's no question whether it's right or wrong anymore. You can take truth in a theoretical way, in a general philosophical way, and you might agree with it. But you really don't know until you actually experience the truth. When you experience it, then there's no question anymore. Spiritual life is like that. It's trying to give us an experience of what is being explained to us. And the holy name is the springboard that opens up all religious or spiritual experiences. Because it is the means in this age for all advancement in spiritual life. Kali Kale, Nama Rupa, Krishna Avatar. So Nam Rupa, Nam, the form of name, is Krishna coming in. He's the incarnation in this age. There's no difference. We see the Lord in the form of the deity on the altar. Jagannath, Baladev, Lady Subhadra, Jai, Gauritai. And that's the deity. The deity is actually also non-different than Krishna. But it's very difficult to approach the realization of the deity being non-different. Because in this age, deity worship is given second position to chanting of the holy name. And that deity worship allows us to help us to practice seeing Krishna in his transcendental form as a deity, serving him, worshiping him, offering our prayers to him. But the holy name is the means, really, for realization of God in that form as the deity. To realize God in the form of the deity comes by way of approaching the deity. It comes by way of approaching Krishna through his name. Because the name itself opens up all aspects of spiritual understanding, all philosophical teachings, all knowledge, all spiritual nomenclature becomes self-evident through the process of chanting Hare Krishna. That's why Srila Prabhupada used to say, chant and be happy. We would think, oh boy, here's that saying again, chant and be happy. So it's maybe like it's an oversimplification. But what he was saying is that whatever happiness you're looking for, you can find it there. And there's another part to that understanding, is that when we look for happiness, everyone looks for happiness because it's the nature of life to be happy. And the goal of life is to be happy. So when people look for happiness outside of the holy name, it's hard to find a happiness in the holy name that is available. The holy name can open up unlimited happiness. But when we devote our attention to other sources of happiness, we somehow or other miss the opportunity to find the happiness within the holy name. And Krishna is somewhat what we say. He likes to be the center. Because he is. He knows his position. God knows his position. He knows he's the best. He's humble too. God can know he's the greatest and still be very humble. It's like knowledge doesn't take away from what we say, one's natural good qualities, when that knowledge is grounded in truth. And knowledge is grounded in truth. So God knows he's the great, because he's God. And he knows his position well. He plays it very good. He doesn't play it, he is it. So when we approach Krishna, he wants to be the focus. He likes to be the center. Not because he's so eager for praise and glorification, it's because he knows that the living entities can only find satisfaction through him only. So the first part of that verse from Chaitanya Shikshastakam is that the holy name clears away all misconceptions and gives, when we say, it starts to awaken the realization of our nature, our spiritual nature. It gives realization. It's not theoretical. It's theoretical, but it's also what we say understandable. So not just theoretical. Lord Chaitanya goes on to explain that Chaitanya Dharma Bhava Mahadirvadi Nirvapya. This world is like a blazing fire. It's full of suffering. If you want to describe the material world, you can describe it best by saying it's a place of suffering. And Krishna says it many times, and he emphasizes it. He says, this world is dukhalayam asasrata. It's temporary and it's miserable. You can't stay here, and you don't like it when you're here in the first place. Everyone is struggling to somehow or other find happiness, but everyone is finding other things. It's a hard struggle. No one likes to die, no one likes to get old, no one likes to get disease, no one likes to suffer. All these things are superimposed just by being in this world. You can't get away from it. It's just the way life is. Life in this world is characteristic by suffering. It's like this. To have a material body means to suffer. Some people have a better body than other bodies, but some are suffering less than others. But still, suffering is there. No one can avoid suffering. That's the nature of this world. So, chant the holy names of the Lord, and Bhava Maha Devagni means forest fire, the blazing fire. And that the holy name destroys the suffering that comes by way of material existence. So here's the antidote for overcoming what is called suffering in this material world. The soul doesn't have to suffer, and the soul by nature doesn't suffer. The body goes through changes, and even the body can be relieved of the suffering when we come to the transcendental platform of existence. So therefore, suffering is really optional. It's not something that one has to experience by being in this world. So the way out of the suffering is not, as most people think, if I can just arrange the material energy in a different way, I can avoid suffering, to somehow find happiness in my arrangement. But as even the expert arrangers can somehow avoid disease, old age, and death, and the calamities that come in between. So that's the nature of this world. If you're in the winter season, it's cold. If you're in the material world, there's suffering. But bring your consciousness to the spiritual platform, and that's called transcendental. And transcendental, trans means to rise above the material. So when our consciousness is in the spiritual platform, then we decrease the effects of the suffering that has upon us. Although it may be happening, it's being reduced gradually until actually there's no more suffering. And even the difficulties that come ordinarily by having a material body, such as old age and death, for one who's on the transcendental platform, there's no suffering. There's no suffering. So that is the beauty of chanting the holy names, that one's consciousness can actually free themselves from what is called the normal course of events, which is the sufferings of this material world. So these are what is called fringe benefits. They're not the real benefits. Chanting the holy names simply is not geared simply to bring you to the platform of freedom from suffering. These are, if you go to work, your boss will say, well, you get 2 weeks vacation every summer. Wow, that's nice. So you think, now a person will think, if I go to work, I'll get 2 weeks vacation. No, you don't go to work to get 2 weeks vacation. But that's part of the benefit. So the going to work is you have another reason for that. The 2 weeks vacation is just some benefit that comes by way of that. So being free from material suffering is really the benefit, the fringe benefit of the holy name. The real benefit is that one actually awakens to transcendental knowledge, real knowledge. And knowledge is really what frees one from all difficulties. People suffer. Why? Because of ignorance. One who is in knowledge doesn't suffer. Knowledge is freedom, ignorance is bondage or suffering. So, chanting of the holy names is Baba Mahadevan Shreya Kaiva Vichendrika Vidha Vidhu Jivanam. Vidha Vidhu Jivanam means that one actually develops real transcendental knowledge. Vidya means knowledge. I'll give you an example. Lord Chaitanya, in describing this section, Vidha Vidhu Jivanam. Vidhu means bride, and Vidya Vidhu, bride, knowledge, Jivanam. So transcendental knowledge becomes alive when one chants the holy name. If you read the books, you can get some knowledge. When you chant the holy names, the knowledge becomes revealed and realized. So the word Vidhu means bride. And so a bride becomes enlivened by the presence of the bridegroom. So just like the bride becomes enlivened by the presence of the bridegroom, Vidya is in the position of the feminine. So transcendental knowledge is feminine. And when it comes in contact with the masculine aspect, which is Krishna, then it becomes alive, just like a bride becomes enlivened by the presence of the bridegroom. That's the meaning of that verse, of that part. So knowledge can be theoretical, philosophical, or it can become where it really belongs is realized knowledge. Realized knowledge is what we're after. We want to understand things by realization and not simply by theory. Theory, you can't do theory. You get substance from reality, not from theory. Theoretical means, well, at least you're in the right direction. But realization means you achieve understanding. So anandam, buddhi, vardhanam. Ananda means bliss. Buddhi means unlimited, and Vardhanam means ocean. So there's an unlimited, you can say, ocean of transcendental happiness that comes by way of chanting Hare Krishna. So there it is, it's right there. Chant the holy names, you become happy. But before you become happy, you become peaceful. First you become satisfied. When you become satisfied, then you become peaceful. When you become peaceful, you become happy. When you become happy, you become joyful. When you become joyful, you become ecstatic. When you become ecstatic, you become blissful. When you become blissful, then you become bad. Spiritually bad. So these are the stages of happiness. You don't stop at happiness, you want to go a little bit further. So this is all available. Why? Because Krishna's name is Krishna. Just like the closer you get to the fire, the warmer you get, the more you see the light. The more that the holy name enters into our life, the more that the holy name lights up everything in our life. Changes us. Just like as when you're cold, by getting near the fire, you become warm. When you get near Krishna, the sound of the holy name, freedom from material miseries, awakening of transcendental knowledge, unlimited happiness, and onward, you start to understand who you are in the spiritual sense of your real identity. Each living being is an individual spirit soul that has transcendental qualities, attributes, characteristics, and activities. We never know. That's us. We don't even know who we are. Amazing, right? Everyone wants to know so much. Well, try to know who you are. That's the real knowledge. We don't even know who we are in the spiritual world, our real identity with Krishna. Through the holy name, it's revealed. Anandam Bhuli Barnam Prati Purdam Purnam Rita Smartanam. That means at every step of chanting the holy name, more and more knowledge of your eternal relationship with Krishna is revealed through the sound of chanting Krishna's name. You can actually understand your identity as a spiritual entity in the spiritual world. This is what's available in this holy name. And then Sarvatma Samparam, the last part. There's no need for any other spiritual practice. Everything is there. Chanting Hare Krishna. Inside, outside, everything becomes purified. Your home, your family, your possessions, everything becomes cleansed through the sound of Krishna's name. It's complete, perfect, nothing else is required. This is the power of Krishna's name. And Lord Chaitanya wanted to bring it in such a way that he personally came to deliver it. He could have sent his representatives to do the same thing. But in order to show, to teach by example, he came, he delivered it, and he practiced it. And he showed the benefits of the practice, just to inspire each and every one of us to take up the process of chanting. So chant. Of course, many of you are chanting. But I think one of the things that needs to be understood in terms of our chanting is we have to have full faith in the holy name. That faith really brings the mercy of the holy name. When we understand how complete the process of chanting is, then and we chant with that faith and with that enthusiasm, the holy name becomes more and more available. Because faith brings about mercy. Bhakti really means faith. Where a lot of the other processes, you really have to experiment with various types, aspects of the process, such as Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga, and they have rules and regulations and principles. We also too. But in order to practice bhakti successfully, one has to have faith. So that sounds like a very, what's the word? Have faith. Yes, just have faith. Faith, faith. That's all you need is faith. Sounds like from these spiritual revivals, you know. But it's the fact. Faith is the evidence of things unseen, and faith is the proof of things yet to come. Evidence and proof is found within the word faith. or the quality of faith. So those who have faith, they are actually already have understanding. So how do you get faith? That's another thing. Faith comes through by practicing, and it comes by associating with those who have faith. And so by associating with those who have faith and practice the process, our faith develops. And our faith develops also by our experience. As we experience what is being given to us in terms of philosophical teachings, our faith gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So faith is everything in the process of bhakti. So Krishna has come to deliver his holy name. And faith in the holy name is faith in the process of bhakti, faith in the process of Krishna consciousness, and faith in Krishna. So this is Lord Chaitanya's teachings. Chant Hare Krishna. But the problem is, we don't do it enough. Kali Yuga is has quite a strong grip on the conditioned souls. So to cut through the effects of this age, determined chanting is required. To chant more and more. Kirtan, japa, there's no difference. Both kirtan and japa are also the means. Kirtan, yes. Japa, yes, both. By performing kirtan, our enthusiasm for japa increases, and by chanting japa, we start to become more and more eager for kirtan. So they're two aspects of the same process. So chant Hare Krishna. Any questions? Yes, what is your name?
Nanda Kishore.
Nandi Kishore.
Chanting the holy names is not something exclusive to the Hindu culture or the Vaishnava culture.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody can chant their names of God, but still it seems there's a difference between chanting certain names of God. Maybe you can say something about different types of
names.
Yeah.
Nam Namakari Bahudan Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatarpita Niyamita Smarane Nakala Tadasrita Bhagripa Bhagavan Mamapi Urdaiva Mindri Sama Yanjali Nanduraga. So the second verse, following the first verse which we just discussed, is my dear Lord, you have hundreds and millions of right names, and there's no rules, there's no regulations, there's no restrictions for chanting. And you have names like Krishna, Govinda. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that the Lord has two categories of names. One is called primary, and the other is called secondary. He says we're not so much interested in the secondary names, but in the primary names. Because in the secondary names, they're more like characteristics of the Lord's activities, such as Ishvara, or Paramatma, or God. These are secondary names, or Brahman. Primary names are, Nanda Nandana, Yasoda Nandana, Govinda, Gopal, Gopinath, Krishna. In these names, these are the primary names of God. Therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in explaining this verse, explains that one should chant only the primary names of God. Now, people were in other, you're referring to other religious traditions also? Names like that? Well, in every name, in every tradition, there are names of God. So, in every tradition, there's also primary and secondary names. So one should chant the primary names of God, which are related to His qualities and activities and relationships with His devotees. Now, the Krishna name is explained in the Vedic scriptures that in the Krishna name, all the qualities of the absolute truth are there. Nija Sarva Shaktish, the same verse explains that. In some of the other names, not all of the qualities are found. Just like it says, if you chant, what is it, 100 names of Vishnu, it's equal to the potency of one name of Rama. And if you chant 3 Ramas, it's equal to the potency of one name of Krishna. So the different names also have different potencies. So the Krishna name is the complete aspect of this, the absolute truth. So I can't really, when we say, analyze various other names in relationship, but you can do the analyzation in terms of what is the description of the name. What is it describing? The personality of God, or some, what we say, relationship with God, with His energy. If it's like that, then it's a lot different. So you have to see it like that. So there are primary names and there are secondary names in every religious tradition. But people don't chant the names of God. They may be referred to. And Srila Prabhupada was very enthusiastic to say that just chant God's names as the feature of of your main practice. People are doing a lot of other things. They think offering prayers for material benedictions, or giving in charity, or doing good to your neighbor, or doing, just studying scripture. This is just as good as chanting God's name. It's not. That's one of the 8th offense of the holy name, is to connect any other spiritual practice and put it on the same level as the holy name. The holy name is exclusive. It is the Yuga Dharma. It is the means for self-realization in this age. Iti sodasakam nam nam kalikama sanasana natana padpatyo payo sarva vedashu drishite. One can search through all religious scriptures and one will not find a more easy, sublime, and perfect process for self-realization than chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the great sages, the holy men, have scrutinizingly studied scriptures and evaluated them. This is the means, the recommended means of this age for self-realization. Yes?
In the last line of the second verse, Lord Chaitanya says, I'm so unfortunate, I have no taste. If he has no taste, how can we have taste?
He's playing the part of the Lord Chaitanya is not saying that from his own point of view. He's in the role of a devotee.
He's called as a devotee.
He's teaching us from the role of the devotee. What does that mean, I have no taste? It means that means I commit offenses. So playing the part of a conditioned devotee, he's teaching by example what is our situation. And what is that? That we're chanting, but we're chanting with offense. So one has to very carefully somehow avoid offenses. Because avoided offenses block they're like clouds that block the sunshine. The sun is there. The holy name is brilliant as the sun. Just like a few hours ago, the sun was bright and shiny. Now you can't see it as much, but it's still there, but it's covered with the clouds. So the offenses are like clouds covering the holy name. So avoid the offenses and the holy name will shine. That's the only concern, is to somehow avoid the negative. So he's teaching. He's teaching by example. But we have to be careful. Okay? Does that answer your question? Yeah, okay. Anyone else? Any other questions? Everyone's convinced? So, the holy name is, what can we say about the holy name? Everything is there. It says one can practice so many other processes, and you can get a little bit of spiritual elevation from these things. But through the holy name, one can make faster. Why do we do these other practices? Why do we worship deities? Why do we study scripture? Why do we perform all the other activities? So we can chant Hare Krishna. We're actually purifying our consciousness through using our energy, time, and intelligence and abilities to serve the Lord. And that opens up our heart so we can chant Hare Krishna. It's all about chanting Hare Krishna. All these other things awaken or purify our consciousness so we can come to the platform of chanting Hare Krishna. That's the goal. Okay. Yes, question.
You said chanting was the most important, and of course deity worshipping as well. And how about jagyas? Is that not?
Deity worship is second. It's not the same as only.
Is a jagya?
Yagya.
Yagya. In this age, Krishna Varnam Tusa Krishna, Sangopanga Saparsana, Yadnai Sankirtana Prayai, Yajanti Hisumesa. In this age, the real Yagya is Harinam Sankirtan. That's the Yagya. These Yagya pujas we do, they are ceremony performances in order to purify the atmosphere. So we can perform a particular ritualistic function in order to ceremonialize and purify a certain thing, such as initiation, birthday ceremonies, or what else, housewarming ceremonies. There's different pujas for different things. But Prabhupada explained, just like when you open a temple, you do a yajna. So when Prabhupada opened the temple in Vrindavan, he said, he made a really grand, elaborate arrangement of Yagya Puj. He called some of the best Brahmins and had all the mantras chanted. It was really a pompous arrangement. But he said it wasn't necessary. We could have just had kirtan, and that would have been enough. But because the Brahmins and the other residents of Vrindavan would never accepted our movement as bona fide, he said, I did all this other stuff. I did all this other stuff. Why? Because, it's part of the debatas, and people identify with that. So we do that. Just like when Prabhupada was getting initiated, when he was getting his sannyas initiation, one of his godbrothers was there chanting the holy name softly. It's Krishna Das Babaji Maharaj. He loved the chant. He was always chanting Hare Krishna, all the time, 24 hours a day. And so Prabhupada was going through the ceremony, and Krishna Das Babaji was chanting, and people were saying, don't chant too loud, because we want to hear the ceremonies, the pujas, the rituals. Prabhupada was saying, chant louder, chant louder, chant louder. It's going like this to Krishna Das Babaji. And later on, Krishna Das Babaji said, I knew he would be successful spreading Krishna consciousness, because Bhaktivedanta, he had full faith in the Holy Name. He had full faith in the Holy Name. So that's the yajna in this age. These other yajnas, they're part of the Vedas, we do them, and they're necessary up to a certain point. But without the chanting of the holy names, no yajna is complete. Yes?
Maharaj, few years back I met a group of very nice people, and they were following another religion like Buddhism, but a part of Buddhism which is called Soka. And their whole life was revolving around a mantra called Namyo Horenge Kyo.
Yeah.
And because being in Krishna consciousness, I believe that Hare Krishna, and we all believe that Hare Krishna is a Maha Mantra. So does that mean that the chanting which they do and their life is totally get affected by that chanting is inferior than what we practice?
Before I came to Krishna, I was in the Nam Myoho Renge Kyo group. And I used to go to their meetings. And that's why I quit. Because in their meetings, what they would do is someone would get up and say, I couldn't find a job for 3 years. And then I chanted Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and I got a job. And somebody would blow a tuba, hey, and then someone would get up and say, my wife hasn't talked to me in 6 years, and now since I'm chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, she talks to me. All right, celebration. So it was like that, one thing after another, some material success. So I said, is this religion? I was chanting those mantras regularly. Nichiren Shoshu, Japanese Buddhism. But I saw what was their goal. The goal was to chant in order to manipulate the material energy. And so they were getting material benefits. That's what it was. It was about improving the material life and overcoming material difficulties. So there's different kinds of practices. We don't criticize anyone's practice, but at the same time we have to show the difference of what's being practiced and what is the goal. So their goal is more or less improving their material life. Any other questions? Yes, Krishna.
She has a question. She said she spoke about self-realization through chanting the holy name. But what about welfare work, like helping others in their life? She felt it was not too much. Is that also important? It's her question.
I think that a balance chanting very often the holy name, but also with others, not looking only for one need to come to Krishna, helping others to come to Krishna. And I believe also in Jesus Christ that we should also make caritative work, not only work for me, but also work for others. Chanting and like a balance. The two things I find very important. Why the Hinduism teachers do not tell often this.
Other aspect here. Well, if you don't, you can do welfare work, but you're not really making.
I want not to say that I do. Only I want to ask if it's not for everyone important, not only looking for me, but also the others, the neighbor who is poor, that I help the neighbor, that he's also happy. I can also chant with the neighbor when he's happy, but not the people who can do something for the children or for the poor. Or I think that, like Mother Teresa, she very often think of God, but she does also something.
Yeah, we're also doing that. We're giving food. We have what is called Food for Life program, food distribution. But we don't give ordinary food, we give prasadam, which is spiritual food. So in that sense, yeah, we're not oblivious to material people's suffering.
But the people who cannot walk, cannot go to the place to have prasadam. The people who cannot walk, we must go home to them to give them.
Well, it depends where you want to put your energies. It's to be compassionate and concerned with other people's suffering is a very good quality. It's a nature. But if you really want to help somebody, I mean, you can use your time and energy for these things, but the problem never gets solved. People are under the influence of their karma. And you can't change their karma simply by material arrangements. You can maybe say, all you can do is you give them a chance to chant Hare Krishna, or take Krishna Prasadam, or a little bit understanding of their relationship with God, then they can somehow rise above their material situations. That is really better. We're giving knowledge, not only, what we say, there are many groups that are giving welfare work, so much. Most religious traditions do that. In fact, I've done a lot of work with Interfaith in America. And working with other groups, they're focusing on all these things. But when it comes to teaching people about transcendental, their relationship with God as being the primary principle that to solve all problems, there's not much emphasis on that. So we give people food so they can get purified by eating Krishna Prasad.
But we must go also to the people who are in hospital, who cannot go to...
Yeah, you can do that. You can bring Prasad there too. You can bring the holy name. We go to hospitals, we go to every place. That's our movement. We go out in the streets, we go to different institutions, we go to universities, we go to hospitals. Where else? Some of our devotees go to hospitals and try to arrange programs. I did a program with the deaf and blind in Poland. So, we're not oblivious to people's suffering, but we know that the real solution to overcome their suffering is not just to somehow change their material situation, but to give them an opportunity of their relationship with God. There's a nice story in the Christian tradition. One great saint, her name was Mary Magdalene. Of course, those of you who are Christians heard. She was somewhat of a prostitute, but she had a lot of love for Christ. She really loved Christ. Although her profession was somewhat seen as a low profession. One day she brought some very, very, very expensive oil to give to Lord Christ. And she was washing his feet with it. It was a public program. So people were criticizing why she's using this expensive oil to wash his feet. She could have used that same money to feed the poor. They were criticizing that. So Christ heard that, and he said something very interesting. He said, the poor, they'll always be with you, but I will not be. I will not be. So to worship God, to worship God's representative, much benefit is gained through that, because by doing that we please the Lord. If we want to really show compassion, we have to show compassion to the soul and the body, but the soul is more important. If we're only focused on the body's going to go through its difficulties anyway, no matter what you do. You can feed it, it gets hungry 4 hours later. You can do whatever you can, but people are under their karma. Just like there was one Christian, his name was Brother John. He lived in a monastery back in the 1500s. He was the pot washer in the monastery. And he was considered the most spiritually advanced, although he was the pot washer. So a lot of times people would write him letters, pray for my father and mother, they're sick, pray for this, pray for that. He would write back, I can't do that. I can't pray in that way because God has put them in that position for a reason. And I don't want to interfere with God's plan. So that's what his understanding. He said, but I will pray that they come to God.
Only one question. We must sometimes have 10 years geduld, patience to visit someone until the person wants to hear something of Krishna.
Yeah, that's nice.
It's also important to help the material side, and then forse 10 years later, questa persona wants to hear of Krishna, and then it's good. But I have
that's the goal. The goal is to hear about Krishna and to become Krishna conscious, but you may cater or serve their other needs in order to make them open. Yes, that's fine. Just like how many people would be here today if we didn't have any Sunday feast? I think the attendance would be a lot less. So, so it's like, people are coming sometimes. The main thing is the feast. Tolerate the lecture until we get to the feast.
Yeah, I have a question. Can we install Vishnu form in a normal Hare Krishna temple, or it's always the Jagannath and Balarama form?
Can we? Well, 400 Vishnu forms. We generally don't do what we say direct puja to Vishnu, because Vishnu is worshipped differently than Krishna. In our temples, it's Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, Sitaram, Lakshman, Hanuman. We also worship Nathji, Balaji. Also Gaurnitai, Radha Krishna deities like that. Giri Govardhan. The forms of the Lord that are related more or less with the personality of God. Vishnu forms are more like functionary forms that have duties within the material world. Vishnu is more or less in charge of taking care of the material energy. Whereas the Krishna forms, including Ram and Nishringadev and all these other forms, they are just objects of our bhakti.
So that wouldn't be right to install a Vishnu form in a Hare Krishna temple?
We don't do that.
Okay.
We give honor to Vishnu.
And that would be also very beautiful to have a Vishnu form in a temple, Hare Krishna temple, because that attracts attention also.
You can put a Vishnu form there, but we wouldn't do formal puja to it. Yeah, that's all right. Prabhupada wanted to, and Christians were selling their churches. He said, we can buy their churches, we'll keep Jesus Christ there, and we'll put Krishna alongside. So the Christians will come and see Christ, and then also see Krishna. Yeah, you can put Vishnu forms. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Vishnu. Vishnu is also Krishna. Yes?
You said before that it's necessary that we lose our roles in daily life and come down from the stage.
No, you keep playing the roles, but don't identify with them.
So that doesn't mean I have to lose people around me.
No, you just keep the roles, but don't realize it's just a role. You have to play the roles, but it's a role. You're not a man. You have a body of a man. So you have to act in that capacity. But that's not you. It's just your body. So it's part of the role that you're playing. You might have a profession as an accountant or a doctor or whatever. You're playing that role, but it's not you. Your real identity is spirit, soul, part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and your real activity is to love and serve God. That's reality. This other part is just roles we play because they're required in this material world. But don't get overly attached to the role. And don't use the role to find all your happiness, because the role can't give you that happiness, because it's just a role. It's a drama. You're in the drama. So you have to know who you are, at the same time play your role good. I think I play a role as a sannyasi, but I'm not a sannyasi. It's just a role I play. play a role as a temple president, play a role as a pujari, play a role as a mother or father. These are roles. You got to play your role. You have to. You can't neglect your role. If you do, you're rejecting your duty, your material duty, and that will interfere with your spiritual practice. So you do your material duty nicely, but you have to know it's simply a role. So you keep your, what would they say? Live locally and think globally. In other words, you function on this level, but your consciousness should be more with God. Because that's who you are. That's you. But after a while, when we get tired of playing all these roles, then we come to Krishna consciousness and give up all the roles. When you get tired of all these other roles, then you can come and perform the role full-time devotion. Then that will destroy all these other roles. And then these other roles decrease. And we have less relationship with these other roles. But still there's some role there. Lord Chaitanya explained how to live in this world and practice Krishna consciousness. It's an interesting way. He uses an analogy. A wife, she has a husband, she has a lover. She's more interested in her lover than her husband. So in order for her husband not to suspect, she does her duty very faithfully to her husband. But in her heart, she's always thinking, when can I go to my lover? That's how you live in this world. Play your role nicely, but always keep your heart with Krishna. Yeah, that's the. And then the more we keep that heart, the more our consciousness will bring us to that position. I'm not a brahmachari. Lord Chaitanya said, I'm not a sannyasi, I'm not a brahmachari, I'm not a grihastha, I'm not a vanaprast, I'm not a brahmin, I'm not a vaishya, I'm not a sudra, I'm not a kshatriya. What am I? Gopi bhate padekamayo or dasa dasa anudasa. That's my real identity. I'm servant of the servant of the servant of the damsels of Braja. In other words, he's explaining his role, his real role, aside from the other roles. But he was a sannyasi. So in following sannyas dharma, he followed it strictly. But he also prays, I'm not a sannyasi. So we have to play our material roles. Good. But at the same time, detach ourselves and attach ourselves to our real role. Okay. Yes, another question?
Maharaj, we are soul, not a body. As you said that we are playing some kind of a role here in this world. But that who is making the karma and who gets affected by karma, the soul or the body, and who suffers by the karma?
It's all an illusion. The soul can't pick up karma because the soul is pure. But the soul can identify with the body, therefore the illusion creates this idea that I'm suffering and enjoying this. It's like a dream. You go to sleep at night and you dream. Sometimes you have nice dreams and you're enjoying. Sometimes you have terrible dreams and you're not enjoying. And then you wake up and you think, oh, that was a dream. But while you're in the dream, you're suffering and enjoying. But is that suffering and enjoying real? No. You say it's a dream. So this is another dream, that's why. This dream is a little longer. Yeah. This is a daydream, that's a night dream. So you have to wake up from this one too. Jeev Jago, Gora Chandra Bole, Kota Nidra, Jayo Maya, Pisachi Nagora. So, yeah, we're creating karma and all these things, but it's simply part of the dream. So if we're suffering and enjoying, we're identifying with the suffering and enjoying because we're identifying with the body. Okay? Okay, so set the alarm clock and get up. Don't push the snooze button. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol.
Jaya